Welcome to One Big Boat. We're all in this together. A show focused on people and organizations whose work is making a true difference in people's lives. Today, we welcome aboard Carrie Peroni and Sandra Ford of the S.E.A.L Foundation. She's on board explaining what made her want to start an organization to help those who learn differently maximize their full potential. That's next on One Big Boat. We're all in this together.
When we started our podcast, One Big Boat, we wanted to focus on nonprofits. And you were one of the ones that I wanted to focus on immediately. Because there are nonprofits out there like that for cancer, breast cancer, and such. But this was the one that people don't really realize what. So why don't you tell people, how'd you start this? Or what do you do and how'd you start this?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. We actually are starting our 8th year, which is crazy to think that we're starting our 8th year. So it was started out of a dream in my head that oftentimes I would replay over and over. Why do children with learning disabilities not have more options in the public school? And I have 3 boys, and my youngest one struggled academically and didn't have the same opportunities as his older brothers did because they wanted to go to a private school, and he couldn't go to that particular one because they didn't have supports in place. So why don't they have supports in place? So fast forward, wanted to create something that would allow students and parents to have more options. So that's how it started, and it was a need that I saw both personally and professionally. As a teacher, worked with students when I taught in the public schools, and saw how they could struggle, but with the right supports in place, how they could access the curriculum and how they could really reach their true potential. So I thought, I need to make a change. We need to make a change. How can this happen? Why aren't there more options for kids? So fast forward, that became a reality in 2017, and we started with one school, helping that school put special education supports in place, and now we're in, 20, 30 plus schools in a variety of ways. So we provide professional development to public and private schools. A huge piece that we added in year 2, I think, or 3, was advocacy, which is we support parents to know what they don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. So you have a child and all of a sudden they're struggling and you're not sure why they're struggling. And we know that learning disabilities are hereditary. So it could be mom or dad that passes it on. It could be an aunt and uncle, grandparent. So lots of times it's their first time navigating special education. And what do I do? What does Johnny or Susie need? How do I know if I'm supporting them in the right way at home? How do I know if I'm signing off on an IEP when I'm at a big table with 5 or 6 different people telling me this is my son or daughter's diagnosis, this is what we think we can do to help them? How do I know what to do or what not to do? So we have an advocate in place that works for the foundation, and she provides advocacy for these parents to help them navigate that process. One of our favorite things is doing simulations, which is you walk in the shoes of a child that learns differently, and you feel what it feels like. You feel the struggles, you feel the anxiety, you feel everything that they feel, and it's about a 3.5 hour PD. And we love to say, okay, you experienced this and you felt like you wanted to check out. These children, they don't have a break. It's 24/7 for them. There's no vacation, there's no summer break, there's no winter break. They navigate every day of their life like this. But your question was, how did it start? It started out of a dream and something that I felt, in every being in my body, that kids need more choices. So how do we give them more choices? Parents need more choices. How do we give them more choices? So it was really about getting into more schools that were private schools that have more flexibility sometimes with the curriculum, and a smaller ratio student-teacher.
Student-teacher. So, Sandy, how do you create programs for kids when everybody is individual? They all have individual issues.
So I work with teachers on how to differentiate your instruction, how to really dig down to the core to find out, how does this child learn best? Do they need auditory? Do they need multisensory? Do they need tactile learning? We do a lot of assessment If we have a student who's having difficulty, we'll really take a deeper dive into what's going on with that student, because we want to find out how they would learn best. Once that happens, I work directly with teachers, I work directly with students to ensure that they're going to get the instruction that they need, that they're going to have access to the curriculum like every student should have.
Yeah, we've worked with Perkins. We used to be Perkins School for the Blind, and we work with some really international leaders and trainers. And one of the issues they've had with kids is that they're not diagnosed correctly. Like somebody looks at them and says, oh, they're just not that smart, or they can't do this, right? Where they do learn differently. So how do you do the evaluation?
So first I talk to teachers, because that happens all the time. What you just described is very common. You know, they'll say, we think that child has ADD. Well, ADD mimics many other disabilities. And so through professional development, through working with teachers individually, first I tell teachers, please don't ever diagnose. You don't know what's going on with the student. I have a story. We had a first grader last year who was acting out. She was never paying attention. Teacher thought she had ADD. I worked with the mom very closely, and mom was against having her tested. I said, well, first, I think you need to check her acuity, her visual acuity, and her hearing. She did. She had a significant hearing loss, which was genetic. Flash forward, she got hearing aids. She was like a different student. So, you know, we could have put this kiddo on medication and said, you know, ourselves, she's got ADD, when she didn't have ADD. She had a hearing loss. And so that mimics ADD. And so it's really important for teachers to know they should never diagnose. You know, you have to go all the right routes. You need to talk to your pediatrician. You need to put in for specific testing. You know, I've worked for years with psychologists, neuropsychologists, so that you can have that dialogue to say, this is what we're seeing, this is what we think you need to check.
I go for these challenges every day. It's really hard. But my parents do a lot for me. They helped me with my journey and also this program. I learned so many new friends that are like me, have this difference. And I'm able to understand how I learn through everybody who helps me. My class sizes are, when I was in elementary school, kindergarten. Actually, in kindergarten, I had to take a test where I was actually sitting next to my best friend. I had no idea what I was doing. It was on vocabulary in English. I had to look and cheat because I had no idea what I was doing. But now I am able to fully understand, with my teacher's help and confidence, I am able to understand what I'm reading and understand how I think. And I'm able to take tests and like different opportunities in different rooms because they understand how I think.
Brooke Potter, we just saw that soundbite from her, and it's almost like she's speaking or she's learning in a different way. And first off, how did you feel when she was talking? And second, like how do you really understand how somebody, like how do you understand dyslexia? How do you understand all that?
So how did I feel when she was talking?
Yeah.
My heart was breaking. I wish that I could have just inserted myself and taken away that pain that she was struggling through. But fast forward, doing that hard stuff was amazing for her. And she is honored that she was able to do that because she came out on the other side realizing there's other people like me, and I just helped so many people in that audience understand what it's like, that the struggle is real, you know. I was so proud of her. I really wanted to just say, I'll read it for her, but that wouldn't have served her well, right? So that's the hardest part as an educator and as a parent, as a teacher, to, you know, sometimes they need to struggle through it to get to the other side. I'm incredibly proud of her. She's an amazing individual, and she's doing fantastic. That was
Just graduated, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. She's doing amazing things. What was your other question?
The other question is just like when she was saying, you know, people don't understand how I learn or how I read
right.
things. And
That's an interesting question because as a parent of a child who learns differently, I referenced the simulations that we do. You really can't understand it unless you're in their shoes. So we developed a simulation, which I'd love to put all of you through this because you don't, 1 in 5 of us have something. So when you are dyslexic, you don't all of a sudden graduate from high school and not have dyslexia. You have that for the rest of your life. So whatever profession you go into, you have to learn how to navigate that, and you have to have supports in place, and you have to have protocols in place to make yourself successful. So how do you understand what that feels like? Do a simulation with us. And you feel what that feels like. You feel the anxiety. You feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to navigate this? And then we talk about, okay, if you have dyslexia as a child, and you mentioned, how do you diagnose early on? The earlier you diagnose, the better it is. It's just like medical. We go to the doctors because we want to prevent any medical issues that may come up. And if we're diagnosed early with a cancer diagnosis, we have a better success rate of beating it. It's the same thing with education. If we can diagnose the child earlier, then they can go through Orton Gillingham as a reading supplement to help them read better. When you're diagnosed, and you struggle all through school and you don't get diagnosed to high school or college or beyond, you've organically have figured out how to navigate this. But you might have gotten in trouble in the process of it. You might have been the class clown or chosen, some routes that probably weren't the best for you because you didn't want to be known as that child that, didn't get it or the dumb kid in class. To really feel what it feels like, you can't unless you are experiencing it. I think the only way that truly people can experience it is going through a simulation, what that actually feels like. For myself, I remember CAPD, central auditory processing disorder, is what my youngest son has. And we did a simulation. And I was like, oh, no, I think that this is kind of overkill. I don't think that this really is what it is. He watched it. Well, it's like this, watching it. I remember he was young. And he said, don't change a thing. He literally was sitting on the bed like that, watching it. And he's like, don't change a thing. I'm like, what do you mean don't change a thing? He said, that's exactly what it's like. And I thought, just take a knife and just keep twisting it. Like, that's how it is for you every day. Like, how do you even learn? Like how, in my head, I'm reading textbook material. I'm reaching out to the specialist. I'm talking to people like a Sandy. Like, how do you work with a child with CAPD? And then light dawns on you like, oh my goodness, this is, how do you learn? Okay, this is what you need to do to access this child's brain and then to get the information back out. So until you're enlightened to really what it feels like to sit in their shoes, it's really difficult to help them. Even special ed teachers have sat through that simulation that we do, and they said, and they're fantastic teachers. They do incredible work with the kids, but they said, I didn't know that's how they feel. Because how do you know how someone feels unless you can experience it, So you can't know how they feel unless you figure out a simulation to put yourself through to figure it out.
Coming up,
Might be a Friday night. Like, all right, I'm out to dinner, but I'll be home at 9. That sounds crazy, but that's what we do.
how the S.E.A.L Foundation answers the call of concerned parents.
When you tell people what you do, Sandy, are they surprised? Or is it like, oh, we're coddling these kids sometimes? Is it that?
No, I've been in this business for a long time. What I love about the foundation is that we don't just do the simulations and walk away. We take it a step further. We've trained, I don't know how many teachers with Orton Gillingham that are going into our private schools. So now kids have access to that where they never had access to it before. It's a program that it pretty much guarantees that a student's going to learn to read, a student with dyslexia, because it's so specific. We have trained teachers to giving them toolkits to, how do you work with a child with ADD? How do you work with a child with CAPD? So, no one, I think things have really changed in special education over the years. Years ago I used to hear a lot, it's not fair. Why does that student get that accommodation or modification and the gen ed student doesn't? It's not like that anymore. People understand, I think they have a greater understanding of, with inclusive practices, that some kids might need something a little bit different in order to learn. So I've seen some great changes in special education over the years.
Is there resistance with kids sometimes because, I'm going to be going to a classroom, I'm going to be taking a test in a different room, or so now I'm different, and that really doesn't play well, especially like in middle school and stuff like that.
Exactly. So when a student has an IEP, we really, as the students get older, we really interview them about, what accommodations are going to work for you. So that if that student feels that stigma of being pulled from a room, we don't put that in the IEP because they're not going to be successful being pulled to a different room. So yes, as students are older, we really take a look at any accommodation or modification that we're making, and we speak with the student about, what works for you, what's helpful, what would help you to access that curriculum.
Yeah. How do people find you? Like, how do schools find you? Obviously, you're down. You've carved out a nice niche, but how do maybe a school in Boston? I mean, how do these places find you?
So we have a good presence on social media now. I have to give a shout out to Nadine who does that for us. Actually, word of mouth, and we have a website, and any place that we go, whether it's a school, whether we're doing a talk, or we're doing an event, a golf tournament, or we're doing a PD, we'll always say, here's our contact information. We want to help others. If you know of a friend or a colleague, here's our card. Tell them to reach out to us. But I honestly think that it's word of mouth, because what's different and unique about us is that we're a true partner. If we are engaged with you, it's not, it's not a cookie cutter. It's not, we check in at this time and check out at this time. Sometimes it's, a 911 on the weekend and the parents having, significant concerns about their child. And so, she'll text me, I'll text her, and, another direct provider, and it might be a Friday night. Like, all right, I'm out to dinner, but I'll be home at 9. That sounds crazy, but that's what we do. We really, because we know what it feels like. We want that parent to feel supported. We want that child to get what they need. And so how do you get a hold of us? You could
S.E.A.L.Foundation.org, right?
.org.
And what is and for those who don't know, this is not a military service. S.E.A.L.
Yes.
What's it stand for?
So it stands for Specialized Education for All Learners. And funny that you say that. Falmouth Road Race is this weekend, and we have 18 runners running it. And we've had several people call saying, I've always wanted to be a Navy SEAL. Can I, is there any bibs left? And Lynn, who is fantastic, who is the brain, who keeps us all organized, will say, it's actually special education. But yeah, a lot of people have made that mistake, thinking that we have something to do with the Navy SEALs, which we don't. You know what though? We have our heroes and I'm so blessed, the staff that we have, unbelievable. It's all about the child. And we always say, at the end of the day, mission is accomplished. Are we giving the child what they need? And lots of times, a direct service provider, which is someone that works directly with the child and gives them the extra support that they need, will say, this child came across today, a teacher asked me, can I take this child in? They don't have an IEP, but they are struggling. And my answer to them would be, if it was your child, how would you want that child to be treated? And they would say X, Y, Z. And I'm like, that's what you need to do then. And that's the luxury that we have, that we get to, all the red tape goes away. So what do you need? Okay, we're going to help you then. And it's not, okay, we need to wait and make sure that they have the testing. And I get that, there's a process for everything. But the luxury that we have is that we don't have to have that wait time for a child. If a child's struggling, we can help them right then. We don't have to say, okay, we need to do all this stuff in order to get you approved to get extra help. So
public schools, class sizes are huge, teachers overworked. How do you make it more appealing? How do you get your roots in there? How do you get in the public
So
school?
we have the advantage of the fact that I worked in New Bedford for many years as a public school employee. And I always say I'm joining church and state. We have done a lot of
And she is.
combining our Catholic schools and our non-public schools with public schools. Professional development, we have now done professional development simulation in almost all of the schools in New Bedford. We're trying to get into Fall River. I would love to do that because I think it's so impactful. And I will tell you that our professional development is so impactful that I've had principals. When we first started, the first few that we did in New Bedford, I had calls and texts like never before with people saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is the best PD I've ever had in my life. So in word spreads, we just did one for high school students actually a couple of weeks ago in New Bedford. So, so it's a great combination. We've done a lot of collaboration between public and private, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Boston too, we were in Boston as well. The last day of school, we were in East Boston at one of the private schools, and it was the hottest day of the summer. And I thought, oh my gosh, my colleague, I looked at her and I said, we are the only thing standing between their summer. It's us. So how is this going to go? And it was amazing, Jay. Like I called Sandy on the way home. I'm like, I can't even believe how amazing this was. Last day of school, 90 degrees. Yes, we did bring Italian ice so that we could give them something to, keep them cool. But they were so engaged. And that particular principal wants us back as a more follow-up, because the worst thing you can do is put folks, teachers, anyone through a simulation and then say, okay, now you know. They can't unknow what they feel now. So now you know what the kids feel like that sit before you, that are struggling. So they need more. They need tools, they need strategies, they need, coaching, they need consultation. How do I work with these students? Because it's not just, yes, they have special education needs, but they're in a regular ed classroom. So, and lots of times I'll say, I feel bad for the regular ed teacher because they didn't have that special training. So here, I just gave you Johnny and you're a regular teacher. You don't know how to work with Johnny. That's not fair to put that on you. So as the principal or, the assistant principal or the SPED director in that school, they need to work with you to give you some tools and strategies on how to work with Johnny too, because Johnny's not with a separate person all day long. So we are branching out, and I asked that particular principal, how did you hear of us? Back to your initial question. That particular principal was at a leadership at Boston College, and a person in her class said, oh, you should reach out to the S.E.A.L Foundation. They do amazing work, and that's how they heard about us.
That's great.
Yeah.
Summer programs, though. What do you?
So we have a lot of direct service providers who will say, I really think this student would benefit from continuing during the summer so that there's no learning loss. And so we never say no to that. That is happening all the time. Are there any other?
In a summer camp that we've connected with, East Camp, it's connected with a YMCA. So it's a camp within a camp, kind of similar to, special ed within a school. And we'll sponsor kids to attend that type of experience so that they can experience a regular camp like everybody else, but there's supports in place. And no one knows who's who. No one knows if I'm the one that needs the extra support or she's the one who needs the extra support. So we basically will sponsor them to go. So we pay for them to go.
And LexiCore, I saw that on your website. You work with 7 different core schools. What is that?
So I'll let Sandy take that in 1 second. We started with 7 schools.
Okay.
That grew like wildfire. Again, word of mouth. Principals like, what are they doing? Why are their MCAS scores so much higher? What's going on at that school? We're launching all the time new schools with Lexia Core 5. So we go into a school and we put a supplemental reading program in place, and it's incredible as far as helping kids with fluency. Sandy can.
So I'm going to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
I think things are meant to be. I met Kerry. I was the special ed director, and we have IDEA funding, which has to fund private schools, and that's how we met. She knew I was retiring, and so I think I was retired one day, and
You
she
retired
called.
very young, by the way.
Yeah, 57.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Kerry called and said, will you come work for me? And I said, I need a little time. And I think 2 weeks later, I was already working for her because she...
I was persistent, just like Vegas, wherever
With our
you
dog, yes.
she wanted to launch Lexia core, and I was very familiar with it from teacher perspective, it's a wonderful program. It's a supplemental program which actually it doesn't take the place of a core program in a classroom. However, it's great for all kids. It's not just for kids with learning disabilities because it is adaptable. So the kids go on, they take a little pretest, and it automatically puts them where they need to be. So some students might be at a level 2, some might be at a level 8, depending on how they test. It also takes a look at individual skills that they need. So some kids need developmental skills, some kids need foundational skills, some need comprehension, vocabulary, and it places them right where they need to be and gives them that practice. It works very much like Orton-Gillingham, which is a specialized program for kids with dyslexia. It follows the same sequence of letters and sounds. And so it does, so it's great because it almost teaches for the teacher if somebody's not trained in Orton-Gillingham. And last, it gives teachers really great data as to how the kid's doing. So we go in, we show them how to run the program, we show them how to read the data, we show them how to collect the data every month so that you can be keeping track of your kids. And it drills down so much as to, even if you have a child that might sit in front of it and maybe they're frustrated with it, you can look and see that they really didn't do much. They might have sat in front of the computer for 18 minutes, but they were only really on for 1 minute. And so you can have an individual conversation with a student to say, what's happening, and so they may say, well, this is really hard. You do a couple of examples with them, and you might actually have to give them some human help to get them to the next level. But so that's how great the data is.
Yeah. And so we can talk all day. What do you want people to know? What have we missed? What have I missed about S.E.A.L?
We hit a lot of stuff. So
Yes.
What I would love people to know is that we're there to help you. If you have a child, you have a cousin, you have a colleague, anyone that has a child with special educational needs and you need some direction or you need help, we're there to help. So whether it's advocacy, whether it's helping you find a school, whether you just need someone to understand what you're going through, that's what we do. So we really are there for the children and their families as well. So
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Sandy.
And thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'd like to appreciate it. And this is all new for me, so I finally did it. Yay!
You did a fantastic job.
One Big Boat is a production of Last Minute Productions Incorporated. This episode was produced by Jay Dobeck. Ethan Gallo was the sound engineer, Jim Johnston and Scott Wyman provided production support and editing, and Joanne Pallotta was the production coordinator.